Welcome to another episode of Me, You, and Jeju. How's it going, Alexis? Good to see you. It's been a little bit of a spell.
Yeah, we took a little break there last week, but we're back. I'm doing pretty good. It's spring on Jeju, so I'm stoked.
I love this weather. This weather.
Yeah, you messaged me the other day, and you were just like sunshine. I was like, oh, Grumpy is not around right now.
It makes me so happy just to be outside in this.
Same. It is really, really nice, and I'm just loving it. And it just sort of came like real quick too, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I think we can count on this. I doubt there's going to be any more cold spells, so I think we're good.
And I'm not sure what about where you are, but where I am, it's also like the season where the tangerine flowers are starting to bloom on the orchards. And I got like orchards all over the place in Jeju.
Right.
So everything smells like citrus. It's amazing.
No, we have the really bad smelling trees up here in the city. Do you know those trees that just have a really funk to them?
No,
yeah, so we got no citrus trees up here.
Everything smells like an orange down here. It's pretty great.
I'm jealous. Yeah, enjoy your time there.
Yeah, we are, and I am. So, what's other than the weather? What have you been up to?
Nothing much. Not camping. Sorry, hiking. Still trying to do as many orms as I can. So it's just been nice, just trying to enjoy the weather. Did a couple drives, some sunsets. It's been really nice. Yeah.
Well, I noticed last episode we were talking about, you actually were making fun of people talking about seeing the dolphins down in Musrapo. And you mentioned...
I've never seen.
And the day after we were done recording, I see you on Instagram posting pictures from a boat. No, video from a boat.
Yeah.
Of dolphins.
Right. So, I mean, 9 years and I've never seen a dolphin, and everyone will just post like, look at the dolphins out in the water. And I'm like, where? And I've never seen them. But so I decided to take matters into my own hands. And for my friend's birthday, I took her out on a boat and we went dolphin watching specifically.
Oh, so cool. How was that? I've never, like a whale tour or something. They have stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So cool. So cool. It was so nice. And so they don't chase the dolphins. They just go to a section and then they just stop. And then there were so many dolphins, it's crazy. And then they just sort of look for them and find them. And then the dolphins were playing and swimming with the boat. It was really magical. I'm so glad I did it.
I was always told you have to go like to Musselpo at like 6 o'clock in the morning to see them, right? But you didn't do that.
Or dusk or something. I don't even really know how it all works. But I also was told, it's always at this time and this time. But I don't care. I've never seen them once. And so being out, we went noonish, I think, or like in the afternoon, and had no problems.
That's fantastic.
We were thinking about doing a sunset, so I think we ended up doing like a 2 o'clock or something like that, and no problem seeing. There were so many of them.
How long was the trip?
The longest part was getting to the dolphin area. I guess they were like found where they were at that point, and then went there and we just stopped. So I guess all in all, it was maybe a little over an hour or so.
That's it.
I will just say we did not stay out there very long. We saw the dolphins, pictures, everyone was really excited. And then we kind of just pretty much turned around and went back to the port.
That's not your whole day. That's great.
No. And it was magical and everyone was happy and that was it. And then you're off the boat and moving along.
I got to do that. I didn't know they had that here. That's such a great
I think
idea.
Your daughter would love it. It's really fun and magical. It was really windy though, of course, Jeju wind. Yeah. So it was a little bit precarious holding my phone to get the videos while I'm holding onto this boat like, oh my God. Yeah. But it was fun.
Did you get seasick?
No, I don't really get seasick. When I was in Hawaii, we went whale watching, and that was the only time I really got seasick, and that was pretty rough. But I've been on a boat here in Jeju numerous times and never had an issue.
Okay, yeah. No,
I don't know why though.
I'd get seasick. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, well then don't go on this. It was very choppy.
Yeah. It's a new thing. The last couple of years, I had to do an interview. There was an older couple who had like going around the world on a boat. I guess they call them yachts, and it wasn't that a huge yacht. And they came to Jeju. And I
remember that story. Yeah. So they took you out?
No, we just did the interview on the boat and on the dock, and so it's just sitting there, and they're fine, and I'm like, I got to get off this boat, otherwise I'm gonna just vomit everywhere in this guy's boat. And
you're like, I'm done. We got to take it to the land. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay.
It was awful, but
when you go fishing here, they give you they'll give you drinks beforehand.
Like
Like, so if you want to take a boat out to the ocean, they'll give you like a drink, and then you can guzzle the drink, and then you can get on the boat.
Oh, like an
It's like
elixir
part of the service.
to settle your stomach. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool. I'll have to see if they sell it at the local
I think
GS25
you
in Jungmoon. And yeah.
nice plug. I like it. That's our local sponsor, everybody.
So on this trip to see the dolphins, did you perchance see a coffee shop or stop anywhere for coffee along the way?
That is a good question. No, we did not this trip, but where we took the boat was in fact a coffee shop.
Mm.
The boat / coffee shop right on the water. So people come there just to have coffee and look at the scenery, and you can also take the boat.
Do you drink coffee? Are you a coffee drinker?
No, I really dislike the cafe culture, and I don't drink coffee.
What do you mean you don't like cafe culture? Like in
I just
general
don't
or
like
Korea?
everyone. I don't like going to them. I don't like being in them. I don't like. Well, it's just really interesting
That's
on
a weird
Jeju, and then all
aversion.
the students will go there for hours, and they'll take all the tables, and then they'll put their bags on the tables and go to dinner for 2 hours, and they're just holding their table. I don't know. I just don't like it.
Okay.
Now I sound like you.
Yeah, you curmudgeon Alexis, grumpy Alexis, get over coffee shops.
I know everyone's always like, "What? That doesn't even." But I just dislike it. I don't know why.
Because when we got here like a decade ago,
Yeah.
the only place I could get a proper cup of coffee was like a drip coffee, which
McDonald's.
well, we didn't even have McDonald's then.
Oh yeah,
So
we didn't have McDonald's. Yeah.
it was a Dunkin' Donuts. That was the only place you could get it. But it's because everything was like the mixed coffee, which is repulsive to me. It's sugar but all the older Koreans really love it, right? Like that's their drink. And then Americano, which is not my cup of tea. But now there's like you can't go 5 feet without hitting a convenience store and a coffee shop.
A million of them. It is absolutely crazy. The island, just the landscape has changed so much because you'll be on the beautiful coastal road that used to have nothing but fields and ocean and sea, and now there's 10 million coffee shops.
Right. Well, you know how like a couple episodes ago we were talking about how bars and places were closing down because of the pandemic, right?
Yep.
Well, apparently one of the businesses that have bloomed on Jeju during the pandemic have been coffee shops.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. It sounds ridiculous.
Considering how much I dislike them, that makes me irritated.
Well, the National Tax Service like released information that said coffee shops on Jeju in the last year grew by 23%. The number
That is
of coffee
madness.
23% they grew by.
That's madness.
Yeah. So, and that's 284 coffee shops. So now there's 1,517 coffee shops on Jeju. 1,517 official.
That's a fantastic factoid, Darryl. Good job with that one. That is, that's a really high number, but I'm also a little surprised it's not more. Like when you just like even going to like, through AWOL or over to, the Gimyeong and past Gimyeong, Wooljeong Root Beach.
Yeah.
It's just all cafes. And I feel like there's 100 just on that beach.
I wonder how many are missing from like how they're defining specifically coffee shops, right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
There's got to be more. I'm like, wow, that's a lot, but also
it's a lot, right? But when you're like, and when you can, like you just said, every 2 steps, every 5 steps is another coffee shop.
Right.
So when you can just walk in a normal neighborhood, like my old neighborhood, and you can see 10 of them, you got to wonder,
Yeah.
Wow,
Well,
that's interesting.
And that's one coffee shop for every 199 households on Jeju.
I also like that fact.
Well,
Good job.
based on the fact
This
that
is just, you're just making me grumpier about it. I'm not going to lie to you. Now
I mean, I trust the numbers, but I also, like I said, I think there's more here, right?
I agree. I'm shocked that they're growing when people have been spending so much time at home.
I think, well, because tourism has dropped drastically, right?
Right.
But
right.
there's still people who have been coming to the island from the mainland.
Ton of people. Yeah.
Right. And so, and coffee shops are a huge, like Koreans drink like an obscene amount of coffee these days, right?
Right.
Like, according to 2018 statistics from Hyundai Research Institute, adults drink about 353 cups a year of coffee, which is more than it used to be. And I think it's also indicative of like people coming to Jeju, right? Like people
Yeah.
want to the scenic, the more like the sitting down and the walking
The
around.
Insta cafes. So
Yeah.
they can take their selfies at their cafes.
Exactly. And like, how many people have you met that are like, I want to come to Jeju, or I want to be here and I want to open a cafe? It's like everyone's dream.
Oh, I have a lot of friends that own cafes. So yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Not just
I think a
people
lot
who
of
said
people
that.
from Seoul came down and invested into doing it. And they don't, it seems to me like I had a couple of friends that had cafes, and they go bankrupt, it goes bankrupt. And they're like, oh, well, we gave it a go.
Yeah, that's odd.
I know,
but that's true. I've seen quite a few people do that, and I've also spoken to a lot of people who are like, I want to become a barista. Like it's like a cool hip thing to be now.
It's very popular classes here in Jeju is to take barista classes. Very popular.
And hand drip. I used to think that was such a I don't know, like a fad.
Hipster?
Yeah, very hipster. Like you get a good friend of mine, Brett. He used to take us to this coffee shop, and it take him like 20 minutes to brew us this hand drip coffee.
That's ridiculous.
It cost like a Manon, right? $10. And then you get
ridiculous. Give me a beer.
Yeah, and it'd be like room temperature because it took so long to make it.
Did it taste good?
I mean, it cost me $10.
Was it mind blowing?
Right, like so I'm already like I mean the scene is great. Do you have a favorite coffee shop on Jeju since we're talking about it?
Well, I do. I have one in Shin Jeju. I just like the owner, and she's got she filled it with plants. So I like her, and I like her plants, and she has really good tea. So I'll go there occasionally, but like I said, it's not something like I prefer to go sit in a park with a friend than be like, let's meet at a cafe. It's just not something I do.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's one in Jungmun I quite like. It's called Cafe Manu, and it's like walking into my aunt's house, like farmhouse back in Canada. Right, like it's got all these antique furniture, spoons on the wall, like the collectible spoons, and like there's dresses that are antique dresses. It's kind of odd. Yeah, it's kind of odd, but I really love the owner. The owner's really, really sweet.
Yeah, same with me. As the owners make it right.
Yeah,
but that just sounds like people go there just for the Insta stories and stuff.
Sure.
I feel like.
Yeah, I'm not sure how popular it really is, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But
man, if you can get Instagram famous here in Jeju, your business is going to be golden.
Yeah, no kidding. No.
Yeah, I have a friend that owns a cafe out in what's up behind Hamdok? What's that town? It'll pop into my head. Anyways, They have a really famous cafe because they have a massive picture window behind a sofa, and it looks out over a field of wheat and a really old barn.
Right. And
you'll see that all over Instagram. People come from all over just to sit on that couch and take a picture at that window. It's crazy, but they do great business. So I'm happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. There's quite a few coffee shops that are literally made around taking photos.
Absolutely,
coffee's coffee for the most part, right?
Yep.
Except for my place in Jungmun, they have very special coffee there. They even have the coffee that the marsupial, the animal that eats the beans and poops it out, and then you take the pooped out beans and you turn it into coffee. He actually has that there.
That's from Vietnam, right?
I don't remember. I just thought of it now. I'm like, oh, and it's not. It's quite expensive, but I had to try it. It's fine. It's nice. I enjoyed
the poop
it.
Coffee.
Yeah.
All right. Great story, Darryl.
So the other thing that is quite important that we actually should talk about.
Okay.
Especially since we're running out of time, we have an interview coming up.
I'm looking forward to this interview.
Fukushima. Have you heard about what's going on with Fukushima?
With the water and
Yeah. So this
is kind of a controversial subject because the news and what the media is saying and what's really happening and things like that's been really interesting. I don't know a lot, but what I've seen, I'm just like, what's true, what's not true.
Right. Well, it's interesting to me. So for backstory for people who don't know, like 2 weeks ago, Japan has decided that it's going to release contaminated water that will be treated into the ocean in 2 years. 2023 is the date that they're going to start releasing the water. Now, the water itself that is there, it's groundwater that has come into contact with the damaged reactors and other things at the site. So
Right.
this isn't water that's been sitting around necessarily for eons or like
Right.
from the accident or whatever. It's
Right.
groundwater that continues to become contaminated because they
Because.
because they need to get rid of everything, right? So
Right.
they've been pumping this water into tanks that sit on that are there. They're like
Okay.
huge tanks, and they have about
Okay.
1,000 of them, and they're
Okay.
about at capacity. So that's why they need to figure out what to do with this water. And because the tanks
Fascinating.
themselves, A, take up too much space, B, to prevent them from decommissioning. And so, and
Oh, like in breaking down, basically.
yeah,
So we don't want that. We want to do something with the water in a chosen way versus an accidental.
yeah.
Okay.
And so the company that is behind the government that's behind the Fukushima decommissioning of the plant, they had like 5 options, and there was the water one, which is just treating it the best they can and then releasing it into the ocean. That
Okay.
is the approved
Okay.
option, right? But this is causing big problems on Jeju. Actually, like people are protesting protesting this at the Japanese embassy that's here. So, were you here when the tsunami happened? The tsunami, or the earthquake, tsunami, the disaster,
What
the
year was
horrible 2011.
No, I was just moving here.
I remember people were already worried about the fisheries then.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. We do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, people were worried about the fisheries then, or eating fish from Japan. And
Yep.
it's
That's a big subject right now. Yeah.
yeah. And it's interesting that it kind of brings up old wounds between the two countries.
Definitely sparking some more tension. That's for sure.
And
Yeah.
well, and what's it called?
We get a lot of our sushi, our sashimi, don't we get a lot of our fish from Japan?
I'm not sure. I don't
Like
know.
the tuna and stuff?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't really know about that. The Korea Herald had actually an article that came out, I believe today. They didn't source where their numbers came from, so I couldn't check them independently. But they said that once the water is released, it'll take 200 days before it reaches Jeju. Between 200 days at the earliest, 280 days. So around like less than a year after it released to actually start affecting. I don't know if it's going to affect Jeju, right? Because that's the other thing.
They said that. I mean, the articles I read, I mean, again, like it's a confusing subject because environmentalists are really upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've been reading is that it really is not going to be an issue. I guess we'll find out.
Nuclear, anything to do with nuclear. When I lived in Canada, I had to cover nuclear power for. Because of the town I lived in, they had a nuclear power plant, and it's really, really controversial and really complicated.
Yeah, it's not an easy. Yeah, exactly. There's things to it.
Like it's very complex science, and if you really want to get into it, right? And so you have America said they support the releasing of the water. Japan's plan. Other companies have the International Atomic Energy Agency said they accept it.
Yeah.
But Korea is very upset about it. Like I believe one of the ministers have said something. Jeju governor is quite. He's made a couple comments about it. Even going back.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, even going back years, maybe not years, but like months before the plan was even announced that this is what Japan was going to do. It'll
be interesting. So when was the projected date? You said 2023?
2023. So we still have 2 years before they go through with this, right?
Yeah. It doesn't seem what I've read. It definitely does not seem like it's going to be something that their minds are not going to get changed. That's what I.
Oh, good point.
It's happening.
Actually, I thought you were talking about like people who are against it too. Right? Like
I don't know. I mean, as much as the protests are happening, I get the impression when I was reading stuff is that it's not, even with protests, it's not, it's going to move on.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah. It's going to happen. And even fisheries said, like the people they interviewed people in the article, we'll link to it so you guys can have a look to it. Look for it yourself. They were saying like even if the water is fine, people are going to be worried about eating fish that are caught from Jeju, just as like a branding thing. right?
It's such a and fish here and the part of the culture is a really big thing for tourists. I mean, it's a massive thing to go to the Haenyeo restaurants, to go and eat Jeju seafood. It's a booming industry here. So that would be worrisome in 2023.
Yeah, the fishery industry employs like some 9,000 people. Right? So that's like 9,000 people in the fisheries industry, and it makes like $1.2 billion a year for Jeju.
Ooh, you got to get all these facts. I like it. I mean, research.
If I don't come with facts, what good am I?
It's your thing, and I really like that. Okay, so hit me with those numbers one more time.
Okay, so the fishery industry employs about 9,100 people.
That's amazing.
Right?
Okay.
And it's equivalent to about $1.2 billion a year. So I think it's like 1.3 trillion won.
That's a massive industry. Yeah. So this is a big deal.
Yeah. So, and I mean, even like scuba divers, like how is this going to affect the scuba diving industry?
I didn't really think about that. Like, are you going to want to get in the water and just be like down there for an hour?
Yeah. Or even like.
Seems like it. Yeah. Yeah. I never even thought about that.
How many other industries are going to be worried about like
the surfing is a big thing here, right? And
swimming.
And just our beaches alone, people come for our beaches. I mean, wow, it's a big deal.
And even if there is no problem with the water, right? Because
it's still because like if you're, why take the chance?
Right.
Like if you really do believe that it's the wrong decision, if you're an environmentalist and you really in your head, you're like, in your heart, you're like, this is not good, then you're certainly not going to take the chance and be getting in the water like you used to,
Yeah. And the thing that Jeju needs is more protests, right? Not that I'm against protests, but like it's just there's a lot of protests.
We should do an episode on that, like all the there's always a protest going on, like the roads, the naval base, there's Jeju knows how to protest very well.
Koreans do. Koreans know how to protest too.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh gosh, you remember when Park Geun-hye? And every weekend, the Koreans were going to the here, even on the islands, but in Seoul, that was a phenomenal something to see.
Yeah,
like all nonviolence, millions taking to the streets with their candles, and so I have never those pictures that came out from that time. That was amazing.
And they're very well trained, like as riot police or as like protest police. They're very.
But it's all very nonviolent. It's all very organized. It's all very, and then they go home, and then they came back again the next weekend. And then they did it again the next weekend. How long they did it until she was impeached? I mean, that's some fascinating stuff. Yeah. Now we're on a whole. We should have an episode about that.
Yeah. And now it's actually about time we start getting to our interview. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go through.
I'm excited.
Let's throw to that now. And now with us is Kim Youjoung, a Ph.D. student in the Department of Anthropology at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. Jeju native and a former researcher and a coordinator at Jeju 4.3 Research Institute. Here today to talk to us about what's going on with 4.3, her work, and a recent article that she's had published in Radical History Review, which we'll link to so everybody can have a look at that. It's called Silent Wounds of Jeju 4.3. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me here, really.
How is everything in Maryland?
Well, things are getting better in terms of COVID, especially. People have been vaccinated, including myself. I'm so lucky.
Oh, hey.
I'm jealous.
Hey, hey.
Youjoung, Baltimore is one of my favorite cities. I used to live in the DC area, and I would come into Baltimore a lot. I just love the water. What is the water area called? Where their aquarium is?
Yeah, the Inner Harbor.
The Inner Harbor. I love it so much there.
Okay. Yeah. That's beautiful there too, like with all this like ships and beautiful buildings. Very artsy.
It is very artsy. Yeah, I haven't been in years and years and years, but it's one of my favorite. How long have you lived there?
Now it's getting 2 years.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were living on Jeju, and then you moved working at the institute, and then you moved to Baltimore to pursue your PhD. That's correct, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I was born and grew up on Jeju until my high school, and then I left for my university to Australia and the UK, and then now I'm here for my PhD.
That's exciting. When's the last time you've been home to Jeju?
Yeah, that was 2 years ago when I was working at Jeju Sasam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is how we became acquainted with one another.
Exactly.
I would send her annoying questions to check things.
Oh, no, you were not.
Yeah. I'm really excited to have you on, Youjoung. I think, your article is really interesting, and I'm not as smart as you two, so I'm slowly getting educated on this, and it's really fascinating.
So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Would you mind quickly summarizing your article, which is already a summarization of a presentation you gave, right?
Which presentation you mean?
It's your article in Silent Wounds of Jeju 4.3. Is it not a summarization of a larger project you worked on?
No. I don't think so. But I hope it will be part in somehow, because PhD is a long way to go, and and I have too many things to have to consider. But for this article, I try to discuss the ways in which the violence of Jeju Sasam marks everyday lives of Jeju Islanders. I do it through the story of Ko Min-ja, who went through Jeju Sasam when she was a child. She lost her father, who was shot to death on a beach in Hamdag. And I didn't mention in the article, but her sister fled to Japan because of the fear that she would get killed too. Min-ja's tragedy, though, did not end there. Later on, she got married to a man whose kinship is also marked by the violence. He lost both of his parents too during Jeju Sasam, and whenever he got drunk, which he frequently did, he would throw things at her or shout at her, saying, "Do you understand my feelings?" As he has lived with these painful memories of Sasam since his childhood as well. So Min-ja, as a daughter and as a wife, and all with all these multiple relationships that she's in, lives a life deeply interweaved with the traces of the violence, which are there, but intrigue sharp pain when they are touched. So for Min-ja, these memories of Sasam are so burdensome that outside responses further inflict suffering on her. For example, the commemorative ceremony at the Jeju Sasam Memorial Park, organized in April every year, does not fully concern her pain either, because it does not capture her intimate relations to the souls of the deceased, her ancestors. Her life, I say in the article, I argue that her life is filled with these reverberations of sufferings, like echoes of sufferings, to use my advisor's term, echoed by the violence of Sasam in her everyday life.
Those are beautiful words, the echoes of suffering.
That was one of the things I thought was interesting, was the fact that she rejected the memorial service, right? Because everybody talks about it, like Moon Jae-in comes down for it. It's supposed to be that 10,000 people show up for it. And so you have this image of like reconciliation, as Jeju likes to promote, right? And then it's not the case for everyone, It's very interesting. Now, why did you pick, like, I've spoken to many some Sasam survivors, and everyone's story is worthy to be written down. Like, you can write, it's awful what all these people went through. How did you pick her, and why her to focus the entire article around?
Yeah, so I came across with her words or her testimony as such in this volume that contains so many testimonies from the survivors across villages on Jeju Island. And this volume was part of a 1,000 testimony collection project, which the Jeju Sasam Research Institute conducted for 5 years in 5 years between 2004 and 2008, if I remember it correctly.
Wow.
And I was going through it, and as you could see in the volumes, but the majority of the testimonies are done by males. And the story of Min-ja appealed to me in particular because, it's a story of a woman, And also, as I went through the narrative, I found she uses different words when she refers to the violence. For example, sometimes she calls it riot, sometimes she calls just Sassam, sometimes she calls it massacre, and etc. There was no kind of settled expression of words that she used when she called violence.
Oh, that's interesting. Like you were saying in the article, right? Like there's no, you kind of start off with talking about the title, like Jeju Sassam, and saying none of those fully encapsulate what it was for the individuals.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So, so in this article, I try to give a sense of a story that is lived. No one has lived this big history narrative that, for example, Jeju Sassam began with a demonstration on the demonstration that celebrates the independence movement on March 1st in 1948, and the violence, quote unquote, ended on September 27, 1954, right, when the regulations were entering the mountain Hala were lifted. No one has lived that story, but people live with their particular historical narratives, in which the everyday relations are embedded. I think I wanted to stress that. And in regards to these words or inadequate words that could express the suffering of the victims or of those who experience the violence, Jeju Sassam has never been given a proper name. Someone might say Sassam itself is a name, but while I agree to it to some extent, it has never been a proper name. When we say Jeju Sassam, we use Arabic numbers, 4.3.
Right.
Sometimes in English, you call it April 3rd too, not Sassam in Korean letters with Shiod, and etc. Right? But I try to do that in my article with alphabets using SAM purposefully. So I try to treat it as a noun because I do think this word means something. Although there have been efforts to call this violence, as you have already discussed in your previous podcast, such as uprising, massacre, riot, and etc. But as in Minja's story, no single word has been able to fully express what she underwent. If we read Minja's words carefully, as I mentioned just now, Minja uses all these words, except uprising when she refers to the violence, or she calls it Sassam. So I am aware that the historical efforts to define what Sassam is or the name the violence are still ongoing, by a number of activists and historians. And I think all these ongoing efforts show the contested names of the violence.
Do you have a preference for what you'd want to be calling?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I have a preference to one word as such. Means I remember, our conversation before I left to the US, right?
Yeah.
About this massacre or uprising and etc. I mean, it is not that massacre is a wrong word. It is more towards that if we just name the violence as a massacre, the historical emphasis can be put on the suppression by the government forces, and then the reasons why the Jeju Islanders did not participate in the May 10 election, or the reasons why they began the uprising on April 3rd could be neglected. But we cannot just call the violence as uprising either, I think, because then we might disregard the violence that was actually conducted by the resistance group, or the suppression that Jeju Islanders underwent because of the government forces. And sometimes we call the violence as April 3rd massacre and uprising, but I don't think it's just massacre and uprising either, because even by looking at Minja's story, we see the ways in which the violence is still lived. They are still with us, and it is so hard to find a word that encompasses all experiences. So now I'm thinking that this incompleteness, that sasam, the word sasam, not the numeric figures, but the alphabet or sasam as in Korean words, entails actually open up spaces for multiple interpretations of people's experiences. Recently, Mr. Kim Jong-min, a local historian, has mentioned Sasam is a unification movement, like people's protests for unification, is something on my mind too. And I'd like to discuss it further with him when I get a chance. When I'm back there.
We talked to Brandon before, and he was kind of against the idea of just not against it wholeheartedly, but he said that it overlooks the local issues when you just look at the national aspect of it, right? So it's such a complicated thing that happened on Jeju. Such a complicated thing.
Youjoung, Darryl just asked you if there was a name that you particularly, sticks out. But is this a discussion that gets had amongst the locals and amongst the scholars and amongst the researchers? Is this an ongoing conversation you guys have together?
Yeah, actually, this has been ongoing since the beginning of the Sasam movement. I assume so. For decades after the conduct of the violence by the government forces, the state called it as a communist riot. I mean, that's their kind of a justification for the conduct of violence on the island. And even still now, like we hear the term from right-wing political parties or other peoples who share those political ideologies, conceive this events or incidents as a communist riot. But then in late 80s, with this the emerging demonstrations across the nation against the government, the
democracy movement,
exactly. Sasam began to be discussed by the activists too, and then there were some discussions that we should call it 항쟁, the riot, or we should also frame it as 학살, to
massacre.
To acknowledge the state violence, which in the end led to the official apology, right, in 2003 by President Roh Moo-hyun, and still, though, I mean, the investigation reports that came out after that, as you know, defines it as an incident because of the legality that has to, frame the compensation and etc. But many scholars and activists are still, against it because this term does not suit the experiences of people.
Right.
So, as I mentioned in my article too, the unnamed monument that is located at Jeju Sasam Park. I think that also expresses as a symbol the contested discussions and unending discourses around Sasam.
It's the first thing you see at the museum. It's really powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very powerful.
And
that's interesting. Okay.
And to explain the conversation we had, we went out for lunch one day, and Youjoung sat me down and said, "Darryl, why do you call it the Jeju Massacre?" and I was very taken aback. I was like, well, because I want to side with the victims, those who were. And she's like, well, what did you say? What did you tell me? What you said?
I actually don't remember what I happened.
Oh, no, I remember very distinctly.
She schooled you, Darryl, huh?
Yeah, well, and rightfully so, because she said that focusing on the massacre, if you don't remember, I remember vividly you said that it makes the Jeju citizens seem like victims, and only victims, which is not the case. Right, so And there's a couple of really, we're running out of time, unfortunately. This is a fascinating conversation because there's so much stuff, the feminism of your article, right? The feminism aspects of your article are something that we need to talk more about. The masculinism, which is a word I didn't really know, of the 4.3 testimonies, and how the women of Jeju rebuilt the villages. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I don't think it's just a testimony where this masculinism unfolds, in constructing the history of Sassam. For example, in thinking about the rising of Sassam, we discussed the work of Kim Dae-sam or Lee Deok-gu, the main figures of the resistance group. But we do not give the same amount of attention to those who functioned as cells of the group, they were called at the time, like that, who were mostly messengers or women who supported their work in many ways. Right. And also, when we go to a village to listen to the experiences of Sassam, we find it is mostly men who we get to talk to, who provides a narrative of what happened in the village. And I'm not saying here, their work or their stories are not valuable, but I'm pointing out, women's stories are relatively subsided, although the violence has affected all of them without discrimination. And again, when discussing women's efforts to rebuild the villages, again, I think we should look at particular and multiple experiences of women. And I think they did what they could do at the time to live a life or even to survive a day or to feed their children. It is not that they decided that by this date we're going to finish reconstructing a village. But, here and there, little by little, they found what they could handle. For example, some women restored a shrine, 할망당, the community shrine, where they recultivated their farm to grow vegetables or crops, where they continued their diving voyages as sea divers, or console the souls of the deceased through rituals with shamans, 신방. And all these acts are part of the everyday life. All these acts are part of the actions that we undertake in our everyday life to live a life, not like a project that was systemically pre-planned for people to take.
A necessity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I didn't realize, you never hear about women being involved in the resistance, right? With Kim Dae-sam. I never really, I don't think it's mentioned in the books, the books that are behind me. Not that I can think of it.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, you could find a book on Kim Dong-il. It was written by another local historian, Kim Chang-hoo, at the Jeju Sassam Research Institute. He met this woman who was involved in this resistance group as a cell, and who went to Japan after what happened in Jeju, and he, interviewed her for a number of times, and then he transcribed the interviews in the book. Yeah.
That's amazing. If only my Korean was a little bit better, so I wouldn't take forever to read. I'm a very slow reader in Korean, unfortunately, and I don't have a lot of vocabulary. But maybe someone can translate that into English. That would be super helpful.
The work of young scholars and activists to have in future, right? Yeah.
Your to-do list is getting longer.
So what are you currently working on when it comes to 4.3?
Yeah. I'm right now looking at the U.S. military documents to examine the U.S. occupation on Jeju Island during the period. So I'm looking at the documents that were produced at the time, like between 1947 and 1954, and to see how Jeju Island was positioned under the context of the Korean War, and how U.S. Archive what kind of perspective that U.S. Archive has on this particular incident of Jeju.
So
that's a project, hey?
Yeah, it is a project.
Wow.
So is America responsible then?
Uh-oh.
Well,
gotten into the big questions here, Youjoung.
You got 30 seconds. Go.
Well, to simply put, I think they do. I think they do. But in the documents, unfortunately, that I have, do not evidence that. That it doesn't have a direct evidence. However, I do see their efforts constantly distancing themselves from engaging the violence.
Yes.
For example, by portraying or making the police as legitimate authority to handle the violence. But it's something that, all means like scholars and activists of Satham are looking to make proof or make an evidence.
Yeah, when I speak to people about that, like not academics or journalists, they always want us to say America is responsible for it, but we can't definitively do that until there's a document or something that says they ordered the scorched earth operation, or they ordered the quarantine or something like that. But we don't have any. There is no proof of that yet.
I mean, I'm sure there is evidence. It's just we haven't been able to find it. And the U.S. imperialism is not, on Jeju. It's across the Asia Pacific and across the world too.
And nothing new.
Not just Jeju Satham that U.S. is responsible for. I'm sure if we look at the other histories, I think it's more like against. I think we should just call the violence against humanity. For this the massacres and violence that undertook in the context of Cold War.
I think that's interesting that you were saying that you haven't found the evidence. I've gone to the 4.3 Peace Museum several times, and I find the wording that they use is it seems very carefully worded, on the posters, or you know what I mean, like the oh my gosh, my brain just turned off, but on the plaques and things like that. When I read it the first time, I was like, that, it wasn't, I just remember clearly, because I didn't know anything. I just was like, I want to go learn about this, island that I'm living on. And I remember very clearly reading something and being like, that seemed very carefully worded about the American involvement. Like it seemed when I read it, I was like, that clearly people took some time to write that very carefully out. Yeah,
definitely. It's still such a contested issue right now, even in the politics of Korea. As a country, we do have also a strong relation with the U.S., right? Diplomatically or relationally, and it's sure. In the museum, the words or description has to be carefully chosen to describe what had happened.
Well, look at how people argue against the naval base and against the second airport, right? They call it another 4.3. They use the naval base, saying it would be an American naval base, and this would just be like another occupation of America, like 4.3 was. So it's still like,
it's definitely in the memories of the Jeju locals for sure.
Yeah, it's just not in the memories or per se, but the militarization of the island, I think, is still ongoing. Not just on Jeju, but on Guam, on Okinawa, and all these islands that strategically maybe are effective for the military, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it seemed what's going on with China and the States, the hostilities there. Well, who knows? It may get worse, right? South China Sea is becoming a hot issue, like a tinder box almost. So hopefully, knock on wood, that everyone stays safe and we don't have to worry about that.
Escalate,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being. I wish we had more time.
Amazing.
It's been really
yeah.
great
Maybe you can come on again sometime. Hey.
Yeah, well, I plan to visit Jeju this summer, so I hope to see you.
Yeah. Oh, that would be wonderful. It'd be nice to visit you. Yeah. This was really I found in your article your voice is very the way you write is very easy to understand and I don't know the right way to say this. I just this is such a hard subject. Like it goes on and on and on. The education never stops. But for people that are interested in learning more and having a personal touch, I just found your writing. It was really, really good. So I really appreciate you taking the time to write that and then to come onto the podcast. Really, really good.
Yeah, and please look at other articles in the series. Other activists and scholars have put their thoughts on there too, and they're so wonderful.
Oh, I should explain. It was like it's a whole series of articles that the Radical History Review published about 4.3. They even have Hung Ki-young, the writer of Aunt Suni Samchong. He wrote something for it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's all thanks to Professor Kristen Hong at the University of Santa Cruz, who organized all this series with the activists and scholars from Jeju and also Jeju diaspora, including Jae-jin Kai-sen, Do Hee-jin, and also the historian Kim Jong-min, and also other activists.
Wow, okay.
Please have a look.
It's about 10 articles, I think, 10 or a dozen articles.
It's about 8 articles.
8 articles?
Not the same size.
We'll be sure to link that for the listeners, hey?
Yeah, no, I was going to direct people. Yeah, please, if you have a time, go read, start off with Youjoung's article and then go to all the others. But make sure you get Youjoung's first.
Yeah. Thanks for being on.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
So that was Kim Youjoung. Fantastic article, fantastic interview.
Really, really good. She so well. I am learning so much on just being a host of this podcast. It's absolutely fascinating the amount of work and time these scholars put into studying and educating us and sharing information with us. That was fascinating interview.
Yeah, and to learn about women being part of the resistance, right?
Exactly.
Like that often gets. The resistance itself often gets overlooked because they want to focus on the state violence, but they're responsible for like 10% of the deaths. I believe that's a number. Yep. And to know that women were a part of it.
And how much women rebuilt this island. Just it's nice to have like you said earlier in the interview, like the female perspective on that, and the reason she chose that woman as her subject. It's just really important that things like this, articles like this, discussions like this are being had, and all perspectives can be shared.
Yeah, and Jeju is known for having like 3 plenty strong women, right? Yep. Henyo and all that stuff. So it's really important that we get that as part of the conversation when we start talking about sex.
Agreed. Right. So Darryl will, for all you listeners, we'll make sure to share all those links, and I hope that we can get some attention to that because really, really good article to read. And I'm really interested in reading the other ones. I didn't realize it was a series. I don't know how. I didn't know that. Yeah,
I wasn't familiar with the Radical History Review before I came across her article. So
we'll share that around. Okay.
And that's been another episode of Me, You, and Jeju. Thank you all for listening. The support's been great.
Thank you. Subscribe.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say subscribe, leave a review, hit that like button, smash it if you prefer. Tell your friends and family, to listen. And so music is of course Jason Lisco. Our art is by Sarah Hodgkiss. My wonderful co-host, Alexis Ostrello. How do I pronounce your last name?
We should know this. Osterly.
Yeah, I said Ostrello.
You can just Alexis Joy is best.
Alexis Joy.
Comes out of the mouth a little bit easier.
Yeah. And I'm Darryl Coote. And until next time, be me, you in Jeju.
Ciao.